hello there again, and welcome back to the Beyond Me YouTube channel. This is the channel for my book, Beyond Me. This is my 25th book. It is by far my biggest and the longest writing project of my long career. This took me 5 years of writing and 45 years of research. It's empirically based, and I'm having this YouTube channel in an effort to try to interest some more folks in giving it a go, reading it and seeing what they think for themselves. I believe it has a lot to offer you and many people who are looking for answers about why they suffer from this destructive self-doubt and sabotage and this insecurity that almost all of us struggle with every day. Why? Well, part of it is something that I discussed in the first of the previous 4 installments of the discussions. You will find in discussion number 1, the last few minutes, me talking about identity failure. It's an idea that I have created and named, and essentially what it boils down to is this. In a very quick overview, I talk about it there a bit too, and it's a major topic in this long book because it requires a great deal of empirical evidence and explanation in order to explain it fully. But briefly, identity failure happens when we as individuals are struggling for a sense of our own value, which we do perpetually. That's the way our minds are constructed, is to get a sense of my own value. You're trying to get a sense of your own value, to feel that your life is worth living, to feel that there's a reason to get out of bed, essentially. And we learn to do that, though, in our society and through our parents, the way we're raised. And I found this to be true everywhere I've traveled. I've been to 53 countries on 6 continents. I've spent an afternoon with a tribe in Papua New Guinea. I've been into the jungles of Borneo to have meals with folks who live there. I've been high up in the Andes, all over the world. And I've never found an exception to this yet, where somebody is clearly not getting their sense of their value from outside them, because almost all of us do. Why? Because we're taught first that we represent specific little identities. I call them identity poses. For me, maybe Bob the nice guy, Bob the writer, Bob the reliable person, whatever it is. I wear these various identities throughout the day to tell me who I am, and then I look to you and those around me to validate it, to say, yeah, Bob really is a nice guy. Bob really is a writer. Bob really, is reliable. He'll be here when he says he'll be here. So that is a very quick example. The problem is that those identities that we create in our heads about ourselves are irrational. They're rigid, they're stereotypes, they're like, these wooden characters you see in Hollywood movies. There's just one dimension to them. It's the same with our identity poses. Bob the nice guy has no flexibility. It's just Bob is supposed to be a nice guy all the time. And when that matters to me, if you suggest I'm not so nice, then that really starts to bother me. So that's what I call identity failure, when part of me is doubting myself. And that's, I believe, a big reason that we all struggle with this self-doubt so often. So taking that as a basis, again, a very, very, very broad overview about what I discuss at length in this book. But I wanted to read a couple of short passages to you that may help you understand it a little bit better for our purposes. And you'll remember that the glasses come off when I have to read because I'm nearsighted. So again, this failure of those identity poses, Bob the nice guy or whatever, comes when you say, you treat me as if I'm maybe not a nice guy, or somebody else does, or they suggest it, in whatever way. Identity failure. This is from the book. Briefly. Identity failure isolates us, focusing our attention on our own immediate emotional needs. We can see this everywhere in the society of my era, here in the 20th and 21st century America. We all know the husband or wife who begins an affair because their spouse doesn't understand me, or the employee who quits a good job because the boss doesn't appreciate hard work, or we watch the highly paid professional athlete who complains that the public doesn't recognize his real contributions to the team. The list is long. The famous singer who feels personally insulted after losing a prestigious music award, the university scientist who feels personally angered by colleague indifference to her finest work, the commercially successful artist who feels personally embittered because his truly original paintings never sell. Each example harkens back to that same great quote by William James, quote, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." And to my notion that it's not the deepest principle on display here, but merely misguided attempts to cope with the deepest principle, the fundamental law of mind, as I describe it, again in another section of the book, but in great detail about what I see as a fundamental function that the mind is perpetually trying to carry out. Continuing with this section here, the only thing missing from the lives of these people that I just referred to is appreciation, a deeper understanding by others of who they are, whether personally or professionally. Why? Why do these people care what others think? Why do you? We're all much like that unhappily philandering husband whose impatience seethes while waiting for his wife to stop talking so he can complain about his tough day at the office, waiting without listening to a word she says. This husband already is aware of every detail he's so eager to share. He knows the pace was hectic, the supervisor unreasonable, the co-worker incompetent. He won't gain a grain of information from the exchange. Yet, venting about the trials he endured all day is the only thing that will help him feel better tonight. Until his wife's inattention demonstrates again that she's no more interested in his day than he is in hers. When his wife won't provide the appreciation he craves, the husband soon finds it elsewhere. And on this goes: misunderstanding, self-obsession, damaged relationships, and the desperate search for someone who can deeply know me, and more me, just as I've experienced it, and as you have too. Ask yourself why you feel such a throbbing need to talk about insignificant details you already know. What could you possibly gain other than someone's understanding, which is to say, confirmation that you are right? Yes, your work days really are as crazy as you think. And yes, you really are forced to cope with much distress to pay the family's bills. Remember that you observe this struggle firsthand daily. You know from direct experience the emotional and physical toll of your job. The reality should not be in doubt. But somehow you're not quite certain about the difficulties you must overcome at work until some other person agrees with you. It's neither sympathy nor empathy that you really seek. It's validation. You are battling your identity failure. So that is one small section about the common sort of symptoms that can result from identity failure, among many, many, many others. You're obsessed with yourself, and you are because you're constantly trying to feel better about yourself through getting other people to agree with the way that you already see yourself, what you already know about your workday or whatever it is. Here is one more little short passage about that same length, maybe a little bit shorter. And this is a thought experiment, which you doubtless know what that is, but for any who may not, a thought experiment is not an experiment with test tubes or machines or numbers or whatever. A thought experiment is something that you do in your head. I guess it could involve numbers, but a thought experiment typically is a scenario that you play out and test something. What if this happened, then what would the result be? You're experimenting with only in your mind. So I have several thought experiments in this book. This is one of them. Let's try a short and simple thought experiment. This may help to make a point. Imagine you live in a world where every other human being is homeless, not like today's homeless population, whose sad condition at least may include a shopping cart of belongings. Every other person you see is primitive, wandering for food and sleeping on the open ground. But you have a home, a mud hut. To your knowledge, you are the only person who possesses shelter from the elements. Your mud hut offers enough room to stand, to walk several paces, to sleep comfortably, to build fires for cooking and warmth. Your food supply is reliable and ample. Compared to every other single member of humanity, you live like an emperor. How would you feel? Does your life seem worth living? Now, imagine a quite different scenario. Every other human being on the planet Earth owns a lovely modern home. You still live in a mud hut. As far as you know, you are the lone person who resides in a dirty, minuscule dwelling exposed on one side to wind and rain and snow. You see all around you the luxurious conditions of your neighbors. They have air conditioning and heat, swimming pools and patios, fully equipped kitchens stocked with food, bedrooms with thick mattresses and silk sheets. Everybody appears to live like royalty, except you. How would you feel? Does your life seem as worth living as before? Now reflect for a few moments on your reactions to those two situations. Nothing about your own life had changed from one to the other. Only the relative poverty or wealth of all the other people around you. Why would you feel so differently? Why was life so good in your mud hut and then so bad? You're viewing these scenarios through the window frame of your life as it is now. Your contrasting responses to these hypotheticals suggest how much you judge the value of your existence based on the outside world. Your status, your power, your possessions, the attitude of others about you, all play into your assessment of your life's worth. As the mud hut owner in scenario 1, you sensed that you'd feel special, important, envied and respected and appreciated by your fellows. You would live as you, the rich person. An identity pose reinforced by the surrounding society 100 times daily. As the mud hut owner in scenario 2, you'd feel just the opposite, remarkably unspecial and unimportant, and surely much unenvied. Living in a hovel among opulence, you would find yourself tirelessly reminded that you're nowhere as valuable as you know yourself to be. You deserved better, didn't you? Life was being unfair to you. Some of your most important identity poses would find no confirmation whatever from the world. The mud hut was no less comfortable when everyone else lived with electricity and running water and their many other conveniences. Whether comparably elevated or comparably lowly, your lifestyle was exactly the same, but you almost certainly didn't see it that way. Hardly anyone would. But that's important to understand. You were able to recognize that life as the mud dweller in a wealthy world wouldn't feel much like living to you. The thought experiment helped you once more to connect with your identity failure. So again, this is just a very brief overview of a key concept in this book, Beyond Me, Dissecting Ego to Find the Innate Love at Humanity's Core, A New Psychology as Philosophy. It is that. And I hope you'll go to Amazon.com, check it out, read some pages, and maybe give it a go. I think it is something that you may find fascinating at a lot of levels, and if you read the reviews that are posted as of right now anyway on Amazon, you'll see that those folks who have read it, some of them have taken the time to post comments and to say how much they're getting out of the book or have gotten out of the book. Anyway, I think that you'll enjoy it. I think you'll benefit from it, and I hope you'll want to maybe check it out, as I said. Well, that's it for this discussion. We'll see you next time. Hopefully it won't be quite so long a wait in between. I hope you're enjoying these talks. We'll see you next time. Bye.